Hi everyone, and welcome to the Critical Review's pre-E3 2016 press conference news roundup. In this video, I'll go over the biggest news from this year's show in LA. Quick disclaimer, the news I'll be covering consists mostly of new game announcements, gameplay reveals, and any other topics I consider to be worth talking about. I will not, however, be covering things like remasters, updates, DLC, or anything for pre-existing games, and will most certainly gloss over something at some point. The reason for this is that although some of these things could be considered interesting, I want to stick to the highlights. Along with that, I will be putting a rating on each piece of information and a few words about what I think each announcement means. The rating scale breaks down like this: critical acclaim for the best and the titles that stood out to me, critical condition for the worst and potentially infuriating reveals, and critical disappointment, which touches on stories and games that didn't quite live up to their full potential. I'll even use that scale to determine the effectiveness of each press conference. Let's do this. Let's start things off with the first press conference that began on Sunday afternoon, Electronic Arts. EA started off strong by showing off Titanfall 2, which drops in on October 28th. Recently, I made a wish list for all the things I wanted to see in the sequel, and so far, they're checking off all the boxes. Single-player campaign, cool new weapons like gravity grenades and swords for the Titans, a grapple hook, and more of that eye-popping gameplay that its predecessor was known for. It easily gets a rating of critical acclaim. Next up is Mass Effect Andromeda. This will tie into my point about Star Wars later, but show, don't tell. All they had were snippets of gameplay interlaced in a behind-the-scenes featurette. I'm really interested to see where they take the franchise, but just show off a gameplay demo because clearly you have something. Critical disappointment. Next up are FIFA and Madden 17. Pass. I'm sorry guys, I just don't care. Following in the yarn trail left by Unravel's Yarny last year is Faye, which has you play as a tiny fox/flying squirrel hybrid as you navigate the forest. Here's the catch: to communicate and progress in the game, you have to learn how to speak to other animals through song. The game also doesn't handhold you in any way and just plops you right in the mix without any direction. That remains to be seen, but for a cool looking and intriguing title slightly reminiscent of Journey on the PS3, Faye gets a rating of critical acclaim. Forgive me, but this next one stung. As the John Williams theme kicked in, I couldn't help but be excited for the plethora of Star Wars games EA has been working on for the past few years. Much to my chagrin, little to nothing was announced or even shown. Battlefront 2 is in the works, apparently, and other titles like the highly anticipated one from Amy Hennig, who worked at Naughty Dog and was a key member in the Uncharted franchise, along with her team at Visceral, showed off concept art and the clip you see here. Along with that, Respawn, who also made Titanfall, is working on a third-person action game that seems to be lightsaber-focused in nature. Again, like with Mass Effect Andromeda, I'd rather you either wait to show me actual gameplay, or just wait. I felt like I was slapped in the face or the rug was pulled out from under me. I know I'm just a consumer, but I've been waiting for a good Star Wars game for a long time. Critical disappointment. Any other franchise would be in critical condition, I'm just saying. Finally, the press conference wrapped up showing off Battlefield 1, which releases on October 21st. I was impressed with the size, destruction, and overall bedlam that this World War I game showcased. Not only that, but they showed off other areas in the war besides just Europe. Although I'm not personally sold on just the Battlefield franchise altogether, Battlefield 1 earns its critical acclaim. For EA's press conference as a whole, I'd like to say that there were moments or brief flashes of greatness. Things like Titanfall 2, Battlefield 1, and Faye look like wonderful titles. However, the two juggernauts that they touted, Mass Effect Andromeda and Star Wars, were horrible disappointments, and their continued deluge of sports-focused gaming that eats up a majority of their press conferences garners them a rating of critical disappointment. That's what I get for being excited for an EA press conference. Next up on Sunday was Bethesda. They opened with the announcement of Quake Champions and a CG trailer. I don't have a strong affection for Quake, but I'm happy for the fans of the franchise, and look forward to seeing what it brings to the first-person shooter genre. Critical acclaim. The next and most intriguing game that Bethesda announced was Prey, which is due out in 2017. This first-person shooter has a plot dipped in mystery and some possible horror aspects on top of it. Color me curious, and for that, Prey gets a rating of critical acclaim. Finally, Bethesda ended by showing off a lot of Dishonored 2, and I mean a lot, which releases on November 11th. First, they showed just environments and concept art, but eventually got to actual gameplay. The game looks good and can be tackled by either the original protagonist from the first game, Corvo, or his daughter Emily. the latter showcasing off a bunch of new abilities like Tether, Shadow Walk, Mesmerize, and a domino spell that ties the fates of all that she marks. Along with that, there was a new mechanic shown where you can move forward and backward in time. Although all these things might seem interesting, none of it really stood out as progressing the franchise in any meaningful way. I have mixed feelings about the first Dishonored and was hoping to be blown away by the newest entry, but as it stands right now, Dishonored 2 gets a critical disappointment. Overall, Bethesda had an okay showing this year. They spoke about their Elder Scrolls card game a little too much and labored on some things that may not have needed as much time in the spotlight. Especially after they came out swinging last year, Bethesda's press conference earns a critical disappointment. Kicking off Monday morning was Microsoft, which opened with Gears of War 4. For those who might not know, I'm a big Gears fan, and that means I'm very critical of the franchise. What was shown was pretty much what I expected, as they showcased the campaign mode. The visuals, lighting, and intense weather conditions reminded me of Razor Hail from Gears 2, which I really appreciated. Destructible cover that also served as an incubation pod for the Swarm was also interesting to me. Can't wait to maim, shoot, and saw my way through that campaign. Critical acclaim. Forza Horizon 3 had a trailer and some co-op gameplay, and unlike the previous franchise we just talked about, I've never had a special place in my heart for the Forza games. However, this game looked gorgeous and playful, which I'm drawn to. Any racing game that can grab my attention in that way deserves my rating of critical acclaim. Next up was Recore, a third-person shooter where your companion's energy source can be removed and placed into different robots. Although I'm still waiting for this game to show off something really exciting, I'm still eager to see where it goes, and for that, it gets a critical acclaim. To be completely honest with you guys, I was so excited to see Final Fantasy XV flash across that screen in which they showed off the Trial of Titan demo. The look and scale of this game still have yet to be matched in my book, but unfortunately there seemed to be some sort of technical difficulty with the demo, which ended up being a pretty big letdown. I'm still really excited for FF15, but this showing gets a rating of critical disappointment.
Thank you, Matt. That was great.
Scalebound was next up and displayed 4-player co-op against a large, crab-like boss monster. The last 2 years prior, I was so enthralled in the idea of what Scalebound could be, but after watching the latest demo, I felt like I was watching footage for one of those Lost Planet games. Scalebound really needs to display what sets it apart, but as of right now, I'm putting it on the watch list. Critical condition. The last huge game, and one that I've been eagerly waiting to get more information on, is Sea of Thieves. In a bold choice, Microsoft decided to show actual people partying up and playing the game with no direction. It completely paid off, and represented a more honest representation of the game. Not only that, but the game looks stunning and has that rare flair, if you will. Easily one of my top games of the show, and for that, it gets critical acclaim. For Microsoft, I feel as if they always have something good to show off, but can sometimes fall short when it comes to leaving you with a memorable event. Although I had some personal distaste for some of the other games they announced and focused on, like Minecraft and Dead Rising 4, Microsoft has left me excited due in no small part to Gears of War 4 and Sea of Thieves. Also, great trailer for Halo Wars 2. Critical acclaim. Okay guys, I'm sorry, but I'm glossing over the PC gaming show. I apologize, but Dawn of War 3 gameplay and Vampire look cool. I didn't watch the whole thing and I don't feel like I can give it a fair assessment. But kudos to them for showing a ton of games and for really improving over last year's snooze fest. Following the PC gaming show was Ubisoft. Ghost Recon Wildlands led the charge and demonstrated its 4-player co-op in its open-world setting. The game seems to check off all the boxes of a more traditional Ghost Recon, and I'm really excited about the possibilities and tactics I can implement with my team. However, there was some terrible voice work that was meant to simulate how the players would talk to one another. It just seemed staged, and I think a live demo would have been more effective. We'll have to wait until March 7th, 2017 to see how the game truly functions, but I'm optimistic about its future. Critical acclaim. Okay guys, this next one is another like Sea of Thieves that I've hotly anticipated. For Honor, which comes out on February 14th, 2017. Focusing on the one faction we've seen little to none of, the Viking Raider made his bloody debut and it was glorious. Along with that, they even fleshed out how these worlds collided in the first place, which is something I cannot wait to explore in the campaign mode. Critical acclaim for this game is a no-brainer. No pun intended. The next game is one that was just recently announced, Watch Dogs 2, which releases on November 15th. They showed off a trailer and gameplay which actually looks somewhat enticing. I was a little lukewarm on the first Watch Dogs and never picked it up, but the fresh feeling and lighter tone of this game are somewhat alluring. Closest we might ever get to a modern-day Assassin's Creed. Critical acclaim. Finally, Ubisoft likes to end their press conferences with a bomb, but this year's wasn't about killing or hacking, but rather about adrenaline-pumping extreme sports. The game is Steep, and in it you can paraglide, ski, snowboard, and wingsuit all over a mountain with your pals. You can also make up races, challenges, and capture your own footage in slow motion, which is pretty cool. The only thing that this game needs is the ability to chill in the lodge with your buddies and sip on some hot chocolate. Credit to Ubisoft for ending on a different note, but regardless, Steep gets a critical acclaim. Ubisoft did a solid job this year. Their big titles made strong showings, with For Honor still being a highlight. Although their games looked good, a little too much time was spent on the new Star Trek Bridge Crew VR, South Park, and a promotional chat about the new Assassin's Creed movie. That being said, Ubisoft gets a score of critical acclaim. The final press conference on Monday, and before the show, was Sony. Now, for those who might not know, Sony is known for dropping huge announcements, and this year was no disappointment. To begin, they had a live orchestra perform this gripping song right before unveiling the new God of War. I originally had thought it would just be a Norse reskin of the old series, but it has shifted dramatically. The fights are more intimate, and Kratos might not be as angry anymore. It felt more like The Last of Us than a God of War game. Let's see where this series goes. Critical acclaim. Last Guardian got a release date of October 25th. About time. Critical acclaim. Horizon Zero Dawn had another impressive showing, and is the Sony exclusive I crave. They just showed off a simple quest, but the visuals and visceral combat of the game are compelling to say the least. Just look at this game for a second. Gorgeous! February 28th, 2017 can't come soon enough. Critical acclaim. Detroit Become Human showed off a trailer all about choices and consequences. I'm intrigued by this game and would like to see if and how many of these choices you could make. For now, it gets a rating of critical acclaim. This next moment felt oddly familiar, but as Kojima revealed himself and his new game Death Stranding with Norman Reedus, I couldn't help but be dragged into this weird nightmare realm. My curiosity is piqued. For that, I give it a critical acclaim. Finally, Spider-Man was shown, which is being developed by Insomniac, who is most well known for their work on the Ratchet & Clank series, along with Sunset Overdrive. Although I was hoping that Sucker Punch, the crew that helmed the infamous series, would be working on this one, I'm excited and cautiously optimistic about a new Spider-Man game. Critical acclaim. In summary, Sony nailed it, and set the bar again for what makes a strong press conference. A focus on games, and a good heaping of class. Also, that live orchestra was wonderfully implemented, and I'd love to see others try something similar in the future. Although I did want to see Kingdom Hearts 3 and Dragon Quest XI, the announcements they focused on, for the most part, were handled with love and care. I know they announced Days Gone and Resident Evil 7, but those along with the Crash Bandicoot Remaster / Skylander don't really get me excited. Aside from that, Sony earns their rating of critical acclaim. There you have it, the biggest news from the biggest press conferences before E3. Again, this isn't every single piece of news, but rather more of my personal picks. Otherwise, this would have been a 3-hour-long video, which would be intimidating. What were your favorite announcements from this year, or what games are you itching to play? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend and give it a like. Also, if you want to stay up to date on all of our projects, follow us on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. If you really want to support us, feel free to on our PayPal down below. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time. Last little thing for this edition of the bonus bit. Jason Vandenberg, the guy in charge of For Honor, is the best presenter at this year's E3. That guy is a natural-born storyteller, and you can feel the passion he has for his game. Jason, you're the best.
Oh, yes.